Never have I been so kind of scared as to where this series will end than I am right now, as we're technically 2 episodes away from this series ending. Episode 21 of Ranking of Kings has really kind of built up a lot of uncertainty surrounding certain characters. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the episode, so let's jump right into it. Yeah, absolutely fantastic episode. Like I said, let's get the animation out of the way. Really incredible. I was a little worried at first because it felt very loose. I think when certain animators get a hold of a series, it can kind of shift how things are kind of viewed. And it really did feel like a lot of perspective of this episode was just kind of on scale. So all the shots were really low, close to the ground. Even this point in which Bosse goes up to Miranjo, you have like this viewpoint from underneath this chair. And it looked weird. It looked very loose in how the animation was. But I quickly realized it was for a reason. As we got into the later parts of it, it felt like it kind of smoothly transitioned to a very loose feeling, very high action scenes that were just absolutely incredible. I really didn't know how I felt with them portraying Bosse as his original self, even larger than his, well, I guess it was about the same size as his original self, very large. And I felt like it was a portrayal of what Bojji sees his enemy as. He doesn't see his enemy as Daida, he sees his enemy as Bosse, and Bosse is this large giant. Somebody he's always looked at as this grand thing, this big, huge, unmovable object. And so to have that kind of portrayal of that, and I think it fit as well for the impact of his attacks. Even when Desper was talking about his fears for Bojji going up against Bosse was the idea of, I've trained him all this time, but I don't think he's ready for this. Even if he dodges his attacks, the impact will still likely kill him. So even with Desper's perspective, not really feeling like he trained him well enough. But even still, it was phenomenally animated. Like I said, I don't really like that loose look when it's not in action, but when it's in action, it's really great. But before the action really kicked in, it was kind of like, this feels a little off. It's kind of like here recently with Dress Up Darling in a couple episodes ago. It just felt very loose and not like the art style we're typically used to with the series. But yeah, just through and through the entire episode, loved it to death. Visually amazing. Just the action scenes were so phenomenal. So yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this episode. Obviously, the overall story here is that Bojji goes up against Bosse. They fight each other. Eventually, Bojji wins, and then they're sent off to the afterlife. Well, one of them is, obviously, and there's a little conflict there. I think it was great to have finally this confirmation of why Bosse was there. Bosse was there because he knew that there was an inner conflict, there was a struggle that Miranjo was going through, and so he's finally showing up to help her with that struggle. And it quickly turns this idea that Bosse is wanting to essentially give that final stand for them. Like, he still wants to fulfill the wish of Miranjo by fighting against everybody else. He even gives the choice of, like, you can join me, or you're going to have to fight me and you're going to die. So again, it's still giving a little bit of a hint that in the end, Bosse is still trying to help Miranjo, succeed in her goal, which is for them to go out and adventure together. But he's still giving the option for the people there to fight for their own survival. And it's still a struggle for me, because in the end, it's still Bosse choosing Miranjo over everybody else. The assumption is that he went full power. Like, he's going to kill Bojji. He even says at some point in his inner thoughts of, I'm just going to make it a quick and painless death. So he's still, at this point, still choosing Miranjo. And so I guess in the end, I understand Bosse. I understand him, but I don't agree with him, which is fine. It's fine to have that feeling that despite your own beliefs in how something should handle, it doesn't have to be how it is. Somebody can still have their own selfish desires. And I think even in the end, it's presenting Bosse as, again, those selfish desires to fulfill what Miranjo wants. Because Miranjo was the first person. Miranjo was his first love, essentially. And Miranjo is the one that he wants to do everything for. So in the end, I have to give the writer credit for, I guess, keeping Bosse true to his own beliefs. Bosse, seeing this tragic event happen with Miranjo, chose to stay at her side this whole time, and Bosse in the end chose Miranjo over everybody else, despite the fact that he lost, accepting that he would still technically be with her, even though, again, we know he wasn't going to be with her. It was also nice that Bosse technically accepted what he had done. Like, in the end, Bosse believed that Miranjo was the way that she was because he messed up. He caused her to be this way. He caused her torment because they were together. And at some point, they did have this child in order to strengthen him. He chose that family and left her behind. While he had family and love and happiness, she only had him. And so he felt like he created this monster. Like everything she's doing and the suffering she's going through is because of his choice. So it's trying to offload, I think, in the end, a lot of the blame from Miranjo, which I don't necessarily believe. But again, in the mindset of Bosse, that is truth. That is what he believes. She did all this stuff because of me. And it does point out the perspective of Miranjo of, I have to get him a child. They can only have one child. I have to get rid of her. I need to bring in healing. I need to get rid of healing because she's going to be upset about this. So it is kind of making everything very clear at this point. The lead up to the fight was great. Obviously, we have a lot of them seeing how strong Bojji has become. Domas rushing out there and getting taken down by Bojji so he doesn't get himself harmed. Everybody choosing Bojji to stand by his side. I think Appius mentioned the idea that despite everything, you gave the crown to Bojji. Bojji is king. And I really like that point of Bojji coming forward because there's several things in his mind. One's obviously the fear of fighting his father. His father is huge to him. He's massive in size. But at the same time, he's also acknowledging that Daida is there and that he has these little visions of Daida essentially protecting him. And so he wants to bring Daida back. And there was like two extremely difficult conundrums here. The first being that, he loves his father and he really does look up to his father. But at the same time, Daida is basically trapped. And this is a conflict that he'll have later. When he can destroy Miranjo and restore Daida, he essentially loses his father and he essentially kills somebody. He doesn't really want that. This is a lot of weight upon this kid. And I think the portrayal of that was really well done. Everybody around him is like, this can't be. We can't let this kid do this. But at the same time, this is something Miranjo wants him to do. And the last kind of conflict we have before the fight was Desper. He believed that he trained Bojji in a way that was selfish. It kind of implies right here that the way that he had trained Bojji was in some way for Oaken's benefit. He says, I trained him for my own selfish desires, which indicates that whatever training he gave Bojji, it was possibly to help Oaken. Now, this is the kind of confusing thing because the other shot that we get in this episode is Desher with one of the officials of the Ranking and King system. And they were essentially saying, you're going to become the leader of the Ranking Kings, right? You're going to be number one, right? So you can get one of these treasures. One of these treasures could possibly, cure Oaken of his immortality. And he's like, nah, I don't need that. And he's like, well, so you're believing in Desper because Desper believes that he can cure the immortality. And it seems like the official of the Ranking and King system is upset at this. Like he wants Desher to win. Like he wants Desher to be the next number one and to get a treasure to help Oaken. Now, if you have not watched this video, please go watch it. I released a video sometime earlier this week, which essentially is me giving my theories on what the whole Ranking and King system is. And my belief is that the gods themselves created the Ranking and King system in order to make people battle it out and then eventually cause a reset by allowing them to come into this treasure room and get immortality and then go crazy. So again, if you haven't watched that video, go check it out. So my thought is does the Ranking and King system, do they have their eyes set on Desher? Like they want Desher to fall because he's too powerful. Like is his kingdom, his knights and everybody too powerful, and so they want him to fall. And again, this scene goes into my theory also on the idea that I believe the gods themselves cursed Oaken with immortality. One, to test it to see if they can corrupt basically a good person, but two, also to draw Desher in. And so I believe, again, this is a lot of signs that is a true statement. And even still, it does give us a lot of hope that this isn't it for Oaken, that Desper is still seeking to save his brother. And so he's not going to stay there, which is thankful. I want my redemption of Oaken. Now, this is where it gets crazy. So they have their fight. At the very end, Bosse is going to destroy Miranjo. And Bojji stops him. Now, here's the interesting thing, because why would Bojji stop Bosse? All I can think of is at this time, Bojji doesn't really know what he wants to do, and he wants to stop Bosse from essentially doing something that's terrible and that he wouldn't want him to do. Like, he knows his father loves Miranjo, and that to allow his father to do that is kind of cruel, so he wanted to stop him. Because in the end, Miranjo does request Bojji to destroy him to save Daida, and he does it. He does accept that. Now, you can argue maybe the way that he did destroy her, it was for a purpose. But either way, Bojji does mention to Miranjo that I'm going to save you from the demon. I was like, wait, hold up. Why does Bojji know that she made this pact with this demon. Then I remembered that technically, way back here, it was actually in the last episode, Desper kind of gave upon Bojji these memories that he kind of got from Miranjo when she was healing them. So Bojji technically should know about the pact that was made between the two of them. And so he basically tells her, I'm going to save you from that demon. And that's kind of what I thought was going to happen. My theories earlier was this idea that we're going to have this point in which this is going to lead them to fighting the demons. He's going to have to save her from this demon. So definitely going to be excited to see getting that stuff. Obviously, at the very end of the episode, we see a lot of these visions where Miranjo is now within this kind of hell of the demon. There's this other demon child, so that kind of confirms that the demon child and this other demon are possibly separate, but essentially she's claiming, I'm sorry, I broke the promise, and she's very upset about it. There's this demon consuming corpses and puking, or consuming people and puking them out. It's whatever she's in is not going to be good, and it does seem like Bojji is going to possibly save her from that. So my assumption is in the next episode, we're probably going to get a lot of that backstory of Miranjo with this child. And then hopefully Bojji doesn't let this demon get away. It seems like they're looking up at this demon as it's flying away and chomping at the soul. So maybe Bojji's going to jump up there and take him on immediately. Or again, if this is something that's just going to lead into later stuff in another season. I'm hoping it's going to wrap this up really solid. My hope is that because it's kind of built up so much around Miranjo, that this is going to be the arc of Miranjo, and that Bojji is going to be able to take down this demon, somehow release Miranjo, will get her whole backstory, and then she can be, able to cross the river and move on with her life. And then I think that'll be a nice solid wrap up. So one episode of that backstory, and then one episode of Bojji taking down this demon, which I think will be a pretty solid ending. Again, I don't think any of the stuff around the Ranking of Kings, Desher, Oaken, I think all that stuff is going to be for later. But yeah, overall, solid episode. Love it to death. That's my thoughts on episode 21 of Ranking of King. Definitely looking forward to the next episode. Hope you all join me here for that. If you have not already, make sure to subscribe. Hit that comment down below. Let me know what you think. Hit that like button. And I hope you all enjoyed, and y'all take care.